Travis doing good, so this is intended to somewhat be a Jasmine comment reply video, but it's more of a request of hers. And so before we get to that, I'll cover some important key things for you to pay attention in the news. A Jewish girls' school was shot up in Toronto on Monday. Very sad. I'm appalled at how everybody has abandoned Israel since October 7th last year. To see people just outright fail to do their jobs, whether it be in government or in the press. It's appalling. And I see the news covering the pattern of Islam over and over and over and over and over and over, and still the governments, the press, Islam are in denial that they're doing it. The latest attack in Rafah yesterday, again, the same pattern. Islam press claims that Israel bombed the settlement. Israel says, no, we didn't. I see the same pattern this whole time, and nobody else sees it. They're purposely lying to have everyone turn on Israel to cause their extermination. Islam cannot be designated as a religion. There are no innocent civilians in Islam. They are not peaceful protesters at all the universities around the world if they're saying from the river to the sea. They are the enemy of the people. They are terrorists. And for nations to acknowledge a Palestinian state is a declaration of war against Israel. It is a hate group by terrorist nations. Ireland, a terrorist nation. Dear God. And it all stems from the Bible. It's right there. All nations shall turn on Israel. And so, yeah, it's awful at how the news covers Ukraine correctly, but refuses to cover Israel correctly. It's just sad. Now remember, those of you who have been following me for a while know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints used to be involved in adoptions. And in order to increase the business for adoptions, you've got to obtain babies. And so the church has had their long-standing policy of denying abortion for girls who've been raped. They'd be sent to LDS Family Services, and they'd be told, you can't have an abortion, that's a sin, Jesus is angry with you. As a victim of rape, You need to have that baby. That baby has a spirit. It's Heavenly Father's child. We need to provide them with the best care and upbringing as possible, because you're a whore as a victim of rape. And so they put the baby up for adoption with LDS Family Services to rich, worthy Mormon couples. It's human trafficking, but it took gay marriage laws to pass in the United States to cause the church to bail from their human trafficking operation, which then resulted in a Mormon down in Arizona doing it for the people from his mission out in the Philippines or Manila or wherever it was out there that he went to. He would bring them, the pregnant mothers, to Arizona and to a house in West Valley City, as I did the reporting on it when it happened, because I was living in West Valley City at the time. And he gets caught and busted for human trafficking. Not the church, the Mormon, who saw the opening left by the church, and he gets busted, and not the church. So, yesterday, or Monday, whenever it was, when I saw it in the news on YouTube yesterday, Sister and Governor Cox, that's a Mormon joke, if you don't know. I believe the majority of my audience is Mormon, but I do get those Christians from time to time, and those who are upset with me for invoking Trump. We love that you attack the church, Travis, but stay away from Trump. The second coming of Trump is this year. He's going to be wrongfully imprisoned and tortured in jail. He'll be crucified by the press, the deep state dumb press. And then his second coming. I see it coming. I see all this happening. Why? Anyway, they're setting up the return for LDS adoptions. Because they have an overflowing foster kid crisis here in Utah now. Because the church isn't involved in adoptions anymore. Now we have a crisis of vast numbers of kids that don't have homes. And so what this means is that the teen girls that are getting raped don't have LDS Family Services to go to anymore to give up their baby to be adopted through them. And thus, with the Arizona guy also getting busted, yeah, now we have the crisis. And so, how do you solve a crisis of a whole bunch of kids who need families? You need an organization to place them into homes. And so, because they're Mormons leading our state, Sister and Governor Cox are making people aware that there's a problem. And so then it'll pave the way again for the church once they overthrow the United States government. a BYU study says that Utah is the safest drivers. We just started the 100 deadliest days of summer here in Utah. We've already got numerous car accidents reported already. Since Friday, when the first one for the 100 deadliest days of summer was a vehicle who ran into a home. Safest drivers, my ass. You cannot trust these BYU studies. They lie to be faith promoting, to deny reality, just like Islam. That's sick and wrong. And so, yeah, Monday there was also a wrong way driver that rammed into a vehicle that was transporting a horse. And yeah, this is a well-established fact in Utah that when a storm happens, even if it's a little drizzle, you have at least 100 accidents that day. Utahns cannot drive. They are the worst drivers in the world. And whoever was involved in this study was purposely doing it to try to brainwash Utahns into thinking, yeah, we're safe. I'm going to be safe because we're safe, because we're the best drivers in the world. And so, yeah, speaking of psychological manipulation, as I've gone over with you over the years, psychology originated from Nazi Germany. With Operation Paperclip, they came to America to work with our CIA to overthrow our government, to thank their American liberators. And as a result, they use what's called fallacy. It's a falsehood. Fallacy, falsehood come from the same root. It's a lie, maliciously created by psychology for the purpose of overthrowing America. And they're using multiple tactics on America. And I'm not going to go over them. We need to get to the main topic of the video today. But just understand that psychologists need a job. They need a living. And in order to do it, just like adoption agencies, they need humans to make their living. This is human trafficking. This is kidnapping human beings, bullying them with name calling. Remember the list that I have? And then, where necessary, coordinating with Big Pharma to drug human beings to alter behavior. And these drugs cause brain damage. So that when a person tries to not take the drugs after being on them for a lengthy period of time, they go through withdrawal symptoms, just like a druggie. And then the psychologist goes, see, you've got a problem. See how your behaviors, you need to take your drugs and accept that you have a problem. This is torture, being held hostage to psychologists in human trafficking with Big Pharma. It's not just done by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's done all over this nation. The press, specifically the deep state Dem press, always talks about sending in the psychos. You know, you're supposed to send in the clowns, not the psychos. Because psychos, when they go into a school after a school shooting, they tell the kids to get over it. Turn that frown upside down, rather than mourn with those who mourn, and hold those accountable, those responsible accountable. And so, on Monday, Sandy City here in Utah had just built a brand new home for those who have been caught in this psychological trap, along with elderly people as well, who would have no other place to live. It's specifically supposed to be a temporary shelter, but because we have a housing crisis in Utah, it's pretty much a permanent place for them to live. But only psychology groups are the ones who are able to place people in a bed there. And they make it so that you don't have your own room. You have to share a room with somebody else. And a 60-year-old woman murdered her 62-year-old roommate. According to the police report, as reported by the news, the 60-year-old hit the 62-year-old woman over the head from behind and tried to hide the body under the bed. Thomas More's Utopia just keeps flooding my mind. And if you aren't somebody who reads, you can watch Ever After by Drew Barrymore, so that you can understand the concept of it, as the movie portrays a representation of Thomas More's principle in his utopian book. When the powers that be refuse to do their jobs, it's the King Noah syndrome from the Book of Mormon, where the bad example of the leaders not only influence the followers to also be bad, but it also forces people to be bad when they don't want to be bad. When you have a corrupt economy, when you have people that don't want to steal, who are being forced into poverty by the corrupt system, they are being forced to have to steal in order to survive. Corruption is what causes survival of the fittest. Was it Darwin who created that monstrosity? Yeah. Darwin, Wallace, and the survival of the fittest. It's BS. It's all crap. None of it is true. And if you knew how to use logic to develop theory to be tested, you would know that he's full of crap. But nobody does, and so everybody just assumes he's smart, knows what he's talking about, and so I guess we came from monkeys. But yeah, it's abuse. Purposely designed to control the masses. To make the people dumb so that they're easily controllable. Just like psychology. Just like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Alright, so before we get into the Jasmine request, had a dream this morning. I have dreams every morning. Sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't. The ones that I do remember typically are prophecy dreams. So yes, this morning was a prophecy dream. That's why we'll be talking to you about it. In my dream, I was in a great and spacious steak center, living there, I guess, with a whole bunch of other people. The people were only residing in the overflow in the cultural hall. All of us were, technically. None of us were in the chapel. And I was thinking about watching a series of movies for the 5th or 6th time. I should have paid more attention to that after I was going for my run and thinking back on it, as I'll explain to you in just a minute here. But I chose not to continue with that and went into the chapel. And while I was in the chapel, seeing everybody else in the overflow, all packed, and it was dark. There were no lights on. The lights were on in the chapel, but not in the overflow. And I was over on the left side, up near the front, as there would be a door off to the left that led to the outside. And it was a bright sunny day outside. And as I'm looking into the crowd and the overflow, Bill and Hillary Clinton, dressed up in fancy attire, suit and a dress, came out from among the crowd into the chapel. They did not acknowledge me or see me, and they were just in there looking around, and they kept walking and were heading right to the podium to assume that position. I then went and sat by the door there that I talked about, and saw a guy come from another building across the walkway, come over to the door, open it, and he knew me and knew that I was moving. I was no longer going to be staying in the cultural hall with everybody else. And so I handed him my fob, the key, and the next scene was me at my new location at a mansion house of my parents. My mom and dad were there, and I was then thinking about what my next work would be at my new place. And so, when I first woke up, I was kind of curious about Bill and Hillary Clinton. And while I was running, that's when I realized, oh, right, it's a prophecy dream, and I was kind of concerned that it might have been my death. Not the case, as I went over it. Because, as I've been going over with you, this is why I'm talking about the dream, because it's going to lead into the main discussion for the video. With a prophecy, there has to be a revelation. The two have to go together. If you give a revelation, you have to give a prophecy. If you give a prophecy, you have to give a revelation. Prophecy is predicting the future. Revelation is giving the day and the hour, the date, the time. And so thus, that's why I was wanting to try to figure out whether it was 5 or 6 times that I had seen them in videos. Because I was searching through my brain trying to find the revelation. What is the time? And so, yeah, looking back on my prophecy dreams, that has been the case. That's how you can identify a prophecy dream. So thus my publication on how to interpret dreams, for Mormons specifically, is in great need of an update. So you guys get exclusive video information for sticking with me this long into the video. And so, yeah, whether it's 5 or 6, it's clear that it takes us to the election this year. And thus why Bill and Hillary were in the dream. That there would be something in the election where Biden apparently wins, but would require that I leave Utah. And hopefully it means going to Zion, not my death. Because my mom's already dead. They're not going to be wealthy enough to have a mansion. The mansion would be Zion, paradise, all that kind of symbolism. So yeah, maybe death. But what was also disturbing is that I was the only one going. Like I said, everybody else stayed behind. That has been a great concern for me. So, last weekend, Jasmine made an appearance, had some comments for me to do videos on, and I had some promises of talking about her experience with missionaries and some other stuff that was going on. Promises for more questions and video, her comments. And then all this week, last week, she was gone. Silence. No word from her. And so I was watching Frasier at the same time. Frasier, a failure in life because he turned to psychology. And, of course, didn't get the girl. And so I finally was able to watch to the end of season 11 to realize that he still didn't get the girl. He's moving to San Francisco, and he's all alone, despite being on the plane trip with the Flashdance girl. He is a complete and utter failure in life. Despite everybody else in his life having a rough time of it, eventually succeeding. His dad, success, gets married. Niles, gets married, has a baby. Roz. Well, she sort of is a failure. She has a kid, though. Cute little girl. And so, yeah, it's not, as much as the show has got its hilarious parts where I just burst out laughing, it really hurts to watch it because I can relate to it. But I'm anti-psychology. But it's the same type of pattern because I was born and raised Mormon. I studied Mormonism, became an anthropologist of the ancient Middle East. I am the foremost expert in the biblical cultures. And as a result, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. They all want me to die. And so, yes, I've had Mormons pretend to be my friend, pretend to be friendly, and they all betray me. Numerous stories of betrayal by Mormons in Utah. It's all phonetically the same. And so, the news also reported a storm in the Mediterranean Sea that severely damaged the brand new port to give aid and comfort to the enemy Islamists. But of course, with my associative memory and my expertise, I was easily connecting to what is going to now be presented for you. 33 minutes into the video. Still, it is. So, there are 32 search results in the Mormon Scripture Quad, because that's the CD-ROM that I have, that I use to go over the scriptures with. And I'll go over some of them for you. In Psalm chapter 107, verse 29, though we can go back a little bit, probably should. Verse 24. These see the works of the Lord, and his wonders in the deep. For he commandeth, and raiseth the stormy wind, which lifteth up the waves thereof. And so, yeah, the Jewish God is smiting that port. They mount up to the heaven. They go down again to the depths. Their soul is melted because of trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man. They are at their wits' end. Then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he bringeth them out of their distress. He maketh the storm calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Then are they glad, because they be quiet. So he bringeth them unto their desired haven. Storms are well known in the Mediterranean, and thus the seas in Israel. It's usually, what was it, September to January is the peak season, and so this storm was out of season, thus proof that the Israeli God is real. I mean, you hear the stories from the Bible about how the Jews are overwhelmed by the enemy until a natural disaster occurs and smites the people dead. And Israel is saved. Very hilarious. Yeah, usually June and July are the lowest for the number of storms in that region. But yeah, September to January is usually the peak season for the storms. And so yes, when you're reading in the scriptures about storms, it can give you a time frame of when they are occurring. And yes, the storm season just happens to fall within our election year this year. And there are storms. That's what we're getting to here. I'm helping you decipher biblical prophecy and understanding what the dates are that are given. This was Jasmine's request. Okay, so this is Psalms. Now we go to Isaiah, which just happened to be plagiarized in the Book of Mormon. For a reason. Isaiah 25. O Lord, thou art my God, I will exalt thee, I will praise thy name, for thou hast done wonderful things, thy counsels of old are faithfulness and truth. For thou hast made of a city an heap, and of a defenced city a ruin, a palace of strangers, to be no city. It shall never be built. Therefore shall the strong people glorify thee. The city of the terrible nations shall fear thee. It's talking about Zion. For thou hast been a strength to the poor. Malachi on tithing. A strength to the needy in his distress. A refuge from the storm. Shadow from the heat, when the blast of the terrible ones is a storm against the wall. Branch of the terrible ones shall be brought low. Isaiah 28. Woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim. Who is he talking about, Mormons? Remember your patriarchal blessings? Which tribe are you from? Whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys. How did Isaiah know of them that are overcome with Mountain Dew? Fine. Behold, the Lord hath a mighty and strong one. Does this sound familiar? Anybody watched that video? No? Okay. Which as a tempest of hail and a destroying storm, as a flood of mighty waters overflowing, shall cast down to the earth with the hand. The crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, shall be trodden underfoot. And he repeats it again. It's chiasmus. Oh, just like in the Book of Mormon. From the late war of Napoleon. Isaiah 29. And thou shalt be brought down, and shalt speak out of the ground, and thy speech shall be low out of the dust, and thy voice shall be as of one that hath a familiar spirit out of the ground, and thy speech shall whisper out of the dust. Moreover, the multitude of thy strangers shall be like small dust, and the multitude of the terrible ones shall be as chaff that passeth away. Yea, it shall be at an instant suddenly. Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder, and with earthquake, and great noise, with storm and tempest, and the flame of the abomination of desolation devouring fire. And the multitude of the nations that fight against Ariel, leave the fish alone. I believe it's Light of God, the city of light, which is assumed to be Jerusalem. It's Isaiah 29, 7. Hope the camera does not freeze on me like yesterday's atrocity. Verse 1. Woe to Ariel, the city where David dwelt. That was in Egypt, which would be the city of Heliopolis. The Sun City. Yep, city or God of light. We should also read the end of verse 8. Behold, he is faint, and his soul hath appetite. So shall the multitude of all the nations be that fight against Mount Zion. And Should have checked that, because I don't think it's... Because the Sade is the throne symbol from Egyptian, the one that's on the head of Isis. And so that's the prefix determinative for the root word of on, but I don't think on is on. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's Yah. The throne of King Yah. Interesting. Yah is Jehovah, as you know it as. Yahweh. Jeremiah, Elijah, those kinds of names. Yah, the Hebrew God, God of creation, who was given the new name Yahweh in Genesis chapter 2 verse 4. And so, yeah, the N is the suffix determinative for king, and as it's a place designation, it's kingdom. And so you have the throne symbol as the prefix determinative, an adjective. And then you have Yah, and then King Yah. That is the translation of Zion. It's pictorial. It is not a single word that has devolved our language. All right, Ezekiel 13 now. Because, even because, it's awkward, they have seduced my people, saying, peace. What is Hebrew for peace? Salem. Where's Salem? Jerusalem. And there was no peace. And so thus Zion, but there was no Zion. Nelson has said, Temple Square is Zion, but this is not Zion. There is no peace, safety, refuge in Utah. This can't be Zion. It has to be peace, safety, and refuge. There should be no poor in Zion. This is not Zion. So yes, Nelson has seduced the Mormons, saying peace when there is no peace. And one built up a wall, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. Say unto them which daub it with untempered mortar, that it shall fall. There shall be an overflowing shower, and ye, O great hailstones, shall fall, and a stormy wind shall rend it. Peace, storm. Seen the patterns yet? I will rend it with a stormy wind in my fury, an overflowing shower in mine anger, great hailstones in my fury to consume it. Okay. Oh, I guess I was supposed to do 4 also. Don't matter. You got the point, right? Okay, so it's also in Mark chapter 4 and Luke 8. This is how you know it's by a Jewish author. and therefore not Christian. See, the Book of Mormon plagiarizes Isaiah from the King James Version of 1769. Errors and all. Mark and Luke, likewise, are plagiarizing Isaiah by creating a story behind it as if to fulfill it according to Christian usurpation, and by extension the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is how Christianity, Islam, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints interpret this. That Isaiah is prophesying, and it occurred during the Roman period with Jesus. But Christianity had not been created when the Jewish authors wrote these. And therefore, it's not Jesus, it's not Christian. They are just repeating the prophecies for the latter days. So, verse 33 of Mark. And with many such parables spake he, Jesus. Now, if they're plagiarizing Isaiah, turning the prophecies of Isaiah into actual stories claiming to be prophecies that did not happen because science cannot establish them as fact, and Constantine didn't create them as fact, as literal history until his creation of Christianity. There's this thing called fallacy. You cannot pull anachronisms. And so, the reason why Matthew, Mark, Luke, John have their Christ named Jesus is because they're using Isaiah as the prophet with his prophecies to present their stories, so that all Jews can have that warm, fuzzy feeling in their boobs and feel confident that this is a true prophecy and revelation for their future Christ who is yet to come. And so, that's why I've been telling you. Isaiah, salvation of Yah. Jesus, Yahshua. Yah saves. That's why the stories by the Jewish authors naming the Christ figure as Jesus is named Jesus, because they're using the prophecies of Isaiah, which is a reversing of the name. Okay? And so Matthew makes this clear for us at the beginning. First, Matthew chapter 1 says, this is the genealogy of Jesus, descendant of David. And then he's not. Joseph is. And then Malachi, who we all assume is Gabriel, and other books by a Jew, tells Joseph that it's okay to marry Mary, even though some other guy knocked her up. And that his name is supposed to be Jesus. And so he quotes from the prophecy of who? Isaiah. Does not name Isaiah. Just generalizes him as the prophet. And then says that his name's supposed to be Emmanuel. And so any Jew reading this would know automatically that it's not about a literal history Jesus. It's about their future Christ, whose name is Emmanuel, from Isaiah. And thus Jesus is named because of the reversing of Isaiah. Jesus is so used because he's the fulfillment story symbolism as prophecy and revelation for the future Jewish Christ. The great prophet Isaiah. Okay? So yes, you got to apply that to the Book of Mormon. We're getting to it. And so just as a heads up, 1 Nephi chapter 18. Let's see. And with many such parables spake he the word unto them, as they were able to hear it. But without a parable spake he not unto them. And when they were alone, he expounded all things to his disciples. And the same day, when the even was come, he said unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in a ship. And there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? You sensitive snowflakes. And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are you so afraid, you sensitive snowflakes? How is it that you have no faith to go with him to Zion? Third Nephi 8 through 10 also. And so Luke 8, it's the same thing repeated. So you're not supposed to harmonize the gospel as literal history. You're supposed to recognize this as the fulfillment retelling of the future Christ of the Jews from Isaiah, and thus why his name is Jesus. And there's peace for Salem, Zion. Notice also the use of boats here. This also is an appeal to the creation, the earth submerged by water, and then the waters recede and the dry land appears, which is a symbolism of baptism, symbolism of death, burial, and resurrection, symbol of pregnancy and childbirth, symbolism of the inundation of the Nile River, etc., etc., etc. These are all visionary, not a one-word translation. And so in the beginning, when I was working on this, in my publications, I call it levels, just in case you were familiar with that. If not, don't worry about it. All of that needs to be updated as I finished Paleo-Hebrew, and as I've still needs to be updated despite finishing it. Because it's a visionary language. The more visions I find in it, the more it needs to be updated. But I do desperately need to revise the lesson manual for Paleo-Hebrew. And then I've got all the other ancient languages to do, and gilder the frame for it. If I don't have my health. And so yes, even the flood story, which is the Egyptian Ogdod story, as the Genesis 1 flooding is the Heliopolis creation glyph. And so Moses, he is put in a reed basket on the Nile River to Egypt, where he is born and raised in the covenant of Pharaoh. And then the other scene, it's a multitude explanation. And so yeah, the boat with Moses on it, the boat with Jesus on it, the man like Moses, the Jewish Christ. This is also what you're supposed to catch on when you read Mark and Luke, is Moses in the reed basket, along with Moses parting the waters, dry land appearing, and Mormons go down on the I-70 to Zion. Oh wait, you missed it. You stayed behind in the great and spacious Stake Center, in the dark, in the cultural hall overflow. So, the two in the Book of Mormon. First Nephi, chapter 18. They're sailing to where, Mormons? The Promised Land. Nephi is now the Christ. This is where the Book of Mormon is correcting Christianity's abominations of taking out the plain and precious truths, calling it literal history. Specifically called Nephi in the Book of Mormon, because there are many other names for the Christ in the Book of Mormon. Lehi starts us off. Alma, Moses, Yah. That's a blatantly obvious one. As he, in Zion, gives up his throne to have a constitutional republic for the people, called the Reign of Judges, and talks about King Noah. Not a coincidence. And so yes, while on a 3-hour tour to the Promised Land, Laman and Lemuel were upset with Nephi not letting them party. They were eating, drinking, and getting married in an orgy while Moses was at the top of the mountain building an idol cow. A golden cow, because gold cow would be too heavy. to run through the forest with. These are Mormon jokes. The golden plates? No, it was gold plates. On purpose for the symbolic meaning. But yeah, they're being wicked. And so he's saying, come on guys, storm's gonna come if you're gonna not stop. And so then they didn't stop, and so the Liahona stopped working, and they didn't know where to steer the ship, and there arose a great storm, great and terrible tempest. Were driven back upon the waters for the space of 3 days. Storm, 3 days. Trying to get to Zion. How many days of darkness? How many solar eclipses over the United States of America, forming the Paleo-Hebrew letter A, with the final stroke being the 2 T's, the last letter in Paleo-Hebrew, which they're technically X's. The sun god at noonday, Emmanuel, casts his shadow upon the United States of America, giving you the days and the hours of your Christ's coming. No man knows the day or the hour, only because of Roman Emperor Constantine, who turned the Jewish prophecies and revelations into literal history, denying the power of prophecy and revelation. Otherwise, it's right there. There it is in the Book of Mormon. They're just retelling the prophecies and revelations in a different story form. That's why the Book of Mormon is not literal history. That's why it plagiarizes. You're supposed to catch on to what's being plagiarized. And so, yes, where are the Isaiah passages plagiarized? After talking about the storm on the boat. You're supposed to catch on. They're purposely selected to be put in the Book of Mormon to help you if you only study, not read, ponder, pray, and get the right feeling. That's not what Moroni is talking about. Alma, chapter 32, starting in verse 28. This is why I've been so impressed with Jasmine. Because Jasmine is studying. And while she is studying, she is inspired with questions. And as she studies those questions or asks me about those questions, I then do comment-reply videos, and then she gets some of her questions answered, and then she gets more questions. And as she studies on those to get answers, and as she asks me questions, and I do comment-reply videos, we're able to help her feel and recognize the Spirit and increase in intelligence, line upon line, precept upon precept. That's how our missionaries were supposed to be doing their missionary work. But the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints purposely puts out ignorant little kids to tell them about their feelings, deceiving people into joining this church, paying up so that they can be human trafficked and sex trafficked. And so the final one is 3 Nephi chapter 8. And again, election. See, 3 Nephi chapter 7. I've done the picture, been showing it to you a lot this year, because it's coming. Now behold, I will show unto you that they did not establish a king over the land, but in this same year, yea, the 13th year, they did destroy upon the judgment seat, yea, did murder the chief judge of the land. And the people were divided one against another, and they did separate one from another into tribes, every man according to his family and his kindreds and friends, and thus they did destroy the government of the land. Now all this was done that there were no wars as yet among them, and all this iniquity had come upon them, upon the people, because they did yield themselves unto the power of Satan. And the regulations of the government were destroyed because of the secret combination of the friends and family and kindred of those who murdered Joseph Smith and Hiram. This is what the Book of Mormon is about. This is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, uniting with the Confederates, who branched off from 9/11/1826. The one group stayed behind in western New York. The other group went to the south to become the Confederates. The ones who stayed behind in western New York would eventually learn who it was that kept them from their final solution in 9/11/1826. And they joined his son's church for the sole purpose of overthrowing it, to become the other branch off. And eventually they had to flee into the wilderness with the Christ in the womb of the woman, immaculately conceived, for the future coming of the Mormon Christ. And so the storm, after we have our election this year, they failed in 2020. This was supposed to happen in 2020, because everything else did. I did my part. I was even surprised that I was able to part the waters. Such as it is, nobody believes. And so, notice the name of the Christ in chapter 8, as we're about to talk about storms from the prophecy of Isaiah. And now it came to pass, according to our record, that we know our record is to be true. For behold, it was a just man who did keep the record. For he truly did many miracles in the name of Jesus. And there was not a man who could do a miracle in the name of Jesus, save he were cleansed every whit from his iniquity. Yeah, you can't be bad and receive prophecy or revelation. You gotta be good. The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Christ. Church wants you to believe that it's another testament of literal history, Jesus. And then you can prophesy only about what has already happened. And you can't go against the prophets of the church with only the titles who deny the power thereof. And so, pay attention to the numbering that goes on here. And now it came to pass, if there was no mistake made by this man in the reckoning of our time, the 33rd year passed away. They're revealing the enemy. The Illuminati infiltrated the Scottish Rites. This Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints confirms Albert Pike's letter to Giuseppe Mazzini and denounces the Wikipedia page on the Illuminati of Johann Adam Weishaupt, claiming that it's no longer on the earth, it dissolved, ceased to exist. It's gone. See, Brigham Young and his Danites used the inverted pentagram on the Nauvoo Temple, and then now the Salt Lake City Temple with the keystone. The Confederates maintain the inverted pentagram on their Confederate flag in the form of the X, the cross, to usurp the land from the true Christ who is to come. And so thus why there are Salem cities along the path of the first day of darkness. The enemy thinks they are going to win and prevent the Christ from coming and prove the Jews false prophets. But nobody knows that they were prophets and revelators in the first place. They don't believe the Christ will come. They deny the power thereof. They do not believe he will show. And he showed. And thank God for AI and YouTube silencing his voice to warn the people, keeping them in the darkness of the cultural hall. And the people began to look with great earnestness for the sign of the death on 8 April 2024. Like I said, this was supposed to be 2020. They failed. And so it got extended to 2024. By the prophet. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. Samuel, name of God. The Lamanite, the anti-Mormon, antichrist, Korahor apostate. He is not from Utah, but he starts his ministry in Utah. See the pattern? For the time that there should be darkness for the space of 3 days over the face of the land. So they had darkness. And then a still small voice. I don't feel good about this still small voice. And yes, storms. All kinds of natural disasters. Tempests, fires, lightnings. And so yeah, pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. So, yeah, I hope that helps Jasmine. I hope she's watching. I hope she's not mad at me. I don't know. She doesn't talk to me. I miss her. She was my star pupil.